four-part series, Asking Made Easier. Today's topic is handling the hard stuff. I think you're really going to like it, working with the objections. I'm Lori K. Davis, Executive Director of the Commonwealth Institute South Florida. We're a network of successful business and professional women, and we provide leadership development, high-level networking, and mentoring through our content-rich programs and events. We're pleased to bring this webinar series to you in partnership with National Leadership Institute and Joanna Brandy and Company. So I just briefly want to share with you how this series came about. I met with my donor earlier this year and had previously worked out an allocation and a plan based on last year's donation. After I walked through that with her, she said to me, you know, I would have given you more. Clearly, I left something on the table. So I turned back and said, I promptly asked her if she would give more. And she said, her reply was, yes, if you would use it for a webinar on the ask. So here we are today in our last part of this series, thanks to my donor. And let me turn it over to Raylyn.
Good morning, everybody, or wait, good afternoon. It's lunchtime, so happy lunchtime. Joanna, if you can advance the next slide for us.
I'm advancing like crazy.
All right, wonderful. And
I'm so sorry. I'm pushing the button over here and things weren't moving. So here's Lori's side here for the Commonwealth Institute. Keep in mind, it shouldn't be this hard to push a button.
You know what? It's a Friday, folks. It is definitely a Friday. So I hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to Let's Do Lunch and the final part of our four-part series. We're happy to have you with us. I am Raylyn Barlow, the President and CEO of National Leadership Institute. We're a nonprofit, like about half of you joining us, if the registration is still correct. Our numbers, I think, have gone up since we checked it yesterday. But we're a nonprofit who focuses on board governance. We're here to help you with your board, with leadership development, much like TCI of South Florida does, and also with fundraising training, which is today's topic today. So I love the story that Lori shares about how this four-part series came to be, talking with the donor. The donor says, you left a little bit on the table. You could have asked me a little bit differently. And I think that's a big, at the heart of what all four of these parts have been about, how to make the ask correctly, handle the no's when they come up. Today we'll have some good tips on how to handle objections and really frame them a different way. So I think we can all agree making the ask has to be for the right amount, with the right donor, at the right time. And it's a tough thing. A lot of it comes down to your personal gut, which I know Joanna is going to talk about. So 7 tools today you can use to turn a no into a yes. That's our topic. We're going to hit a lot of stuff, so take your notes, get your questions ready. And my colleague Diana is here, Diana Rosang. Diana, you're going to help with that, correct?
I am. Welcome, everybody. So happy to have you here. Just a reminder, we're going to have about 10 minutes at the end of this webinar. So make sure while we're going along, if you have any questions, please make sure to use that chat box we have here in the Zoom webinar to submit your questions so we can get them at the end. And a little special part 4 is going to be submitting your favorite ways to make the ask. Make sure to mention what are your favorite questions to ask your donor at the end. So that way those asks are happening. And maybe you have some good ideas on how to turn your no's into yeses. So again, make sure you submit those questions, submit your favorite ways, and we'll get to those at the end. Thanks so much.
Very good, guys. And the interactive for sure. So Joanna, I know you were hoping to have 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions. So,
I hope so.
Yeah. So Joanna, you and many experts tell us that one of the best ways to handle objections is a positive mindset. That positive mindset is so critical. So if we take a look at your slide, it shows why you are the perfect person to do this webinar. You are a positive leadership coach. You're a consultant. You're an author, a national speaker. You've worked with clients and donors around the country, clients in nonprofit, in both for-profit and nonprofits around the country. So we love it when you talk to us about what really goes on in the brain and how to stay positive. And that's so important if you're getting a lot of no's, no from donors. So Joanna, take it away, and we look forward to it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Can also think about this as adopting $1 million mindset. We did that at Fundraising Academy, and I thought I'm beginning to think of everything we've been doing here as adopting that $1 million mindset. So as Lori Kay said, you don't leave money on the table. So a quick review of what we've covered in the last 3 webinars. And if you've missed them, they will be posted so that you can go back and get the whole picture. Business is all about relationships. We've known this for a long time, but haven't always taught it for a long time. And today's relationship model looks way different than the relationship model of, say, 20 years ago, when that classic movie came out, Glengarry, Glenn Ross, and it was all about sales, and it was always about always be closing, ABCs of selling. Well, the ABCs of selling have really, really changed, and that's more about being in attunement with your prospect or your prospective donor. Remember that whenever we talk here, we're talking about fundraising, and we're also talking about sales. We have a good number of people that come on the calls because they want the same advice that they can use in a business sales environment. So the model has changed, and I love that, because we now spend 90% of our time building relationship, identifying needs, approaching people, making our presentation, and building rapport. And it's just towards the end that we think about really going for the ask. In my 29 years of teaching, I've had an exercise that I've done with probably hundreds of people in different settings about customer loyalty, and you could of course translate to donor loyalty. And I asked this question: what qualities of a relationship have to be present in order for that relationship to be a long-term, lifetime, loyal relationship? And then I track what they give me. I write it on a flip chart, and through the years I noticed a pattern. And the pattern was that certain things came up every time: trust, respect, appreciation, communication, and I've added kindness, because in these days we need to put a little kindness in there. And I was very recently giving a speech to a group of CEOs in Mobile, Alabama, when one of the gentlemen raised his hand after seeing this and said, "Excuse me, it's not track, it has to be tracks, because if you don't do it all with sincerity, it doesn't work." So I thank that gentleman for adding another letter to my acronym. It's real important that we choose a positive, optimistic filter before we go in to make the ask, actually every time we go in to be with the donor, that we take the time to sit still and put ourselves in the most positive place possible, because optimists outsell pessimists by 37%. So there's a lot of evidence that by putting a filter over how we think, how we look at the situation, can change the outcome of the situation. And this we know from positive psychology, which is what I'm trained in, is that neurons that fire together, wire together. So you can train your brain to be more positive. You can train your brain to be happier, because the more you practice, the more those neurons begin firing together and eventually creating sort of a superhighway in your brain right to optimism. So that shift that you need to make happens really quickly. The other things that we've talked about, and this was last month, we had such a lovely conversation about rapport and how rapport builds trust. And all along the process, we need to be building and connecting and continuing to build rapport. So before the ask, and remember that chart, 90% is the before the ask part. Before the ask, it's about building trust. It's about letting people know that they can trust you, and that mutual trust that we build when we get into rapport with people. It's about understanding what people need, where their pain is, and in the case of fundraising, where their passion is. Being a solutions provider, find out where their problems are. What can you give? What possibilities can you offer them to make their lives better, easier, more fulfilling? So listen deeply to what matters to them and tell a very compelling story of your cause. Link it right up to the things that they believe in, that they're passionate in. Let them know what a difference they can make, what difference their donation can make once it's made. Handle objections, which is really the focus today, the hard stuff, or what we perceive to be the hard stuff. How do we handle these things? Call objections. And of course, they all work better when we're in rapport. So go back and make sure you see the one that we did last time so that you can learn a deeper sense of what that means to be in the dance of rapport with another. It seems that people like people who are like themselves. So we need to be more flexible. We need to constantly be pacing for alignment with the other, meeting them where they are, matching some part of their ongoing experience, being empathetic, really establishing that sense of trust and credibility so that you're able to get across to them, I'm like you and you can trust me, of course, without saying that. So there is something called the law of requisite variety. I'm trained in neurolinguistics, and this is one of my very favorite laws. The more flexibility you have in your style, the easier it is to build rapport with another. So take away those rigid personas that you may be holding onto and allow yourself the freedom of flexing a little bit so that you can get into that relationship dance with your prospect so much easier. Now, surrounding the body, I'm taking a breath, remembering to take a breath, and please remember to take a breath when you're presenting to any one of your prospects. Surrounding our body is a very large electromagnetic field. And the largest electromagnetic field in the body, 5,000 times more powerful than the electromagnetic field of the brain, is the electromagnetic field of the heart. So all of the teaching that we've been doing is based on the fact that when you go to your heart and when you come from your heart, when you connect with the heart, makes so much of a difference. So ask yourself this question all the time. What am I broadcasting? What am I broadcasting? Am I broadcasting that vibe of appreciation, which is even and flowing and calming, or am I vibrating a little bit of frustration? So a lot of this is about you, is about how are you interacting with yourself and your own system so that when you get there, you're ready to handle anything the prospect or customer or donor, or however you phrase it. If you're in the restaurant business, it might be a guest. Now, today's selling cycle kind of looks like this. You know, we spend a lot of time up front, and then we finally get to number 7, the ask, the closing, and then of course number 8, which is the follow-up. That keeps the relationship going. But I just want to let you know that sometimes it's not quite this sequential. So sometimes you'll get an objection over there when you're doing your approach. You'll get an objection during your need discovery. You'll get an objection after you ask. So make sure that when you look at this, there's a fluidity to it. It goes forward and then sometimes it goes backward a little bit, but there's a fluidity to the selling cycle. So our learning objectives today are to develop that positive attitude towards the objections and really understand why the prospective donors might have a resistance to giving. Know some of the basic strategies for overcoming objections. And know this, objections always reveal interest. They're actually better than questions, because sometimes objections get deeper into what the person really needs. So it's really about welcoming them. So we're going to redefine and we're going to help you embrace those objections. Remember that hearing the word no and hearing an objection are two different things. So successful presentations often have more objections than unsuccessful ones. It means that your donor, client, prospect is more interactive. They're more interested. And they're just a normal part of almost every conversation, not just in fundraising, but in every conversation you have. Be aware of what an objection looks like. So you might be going out with some friends for dinner tonight and someone says, no, I don't want pizza. I'm on a diet. That's an objection. So learn to look at objections as just information. Now, objection is anything the prospect says or does that presents an obstacle to the smooth close or the smooth asks. So as you change your attitude towards them, as you welcome and accept them as a challenge and as an opportunity, it will benefit you and the prospect. Now, if you fear objections, if you worry about objections, you're going to fumble your response, often causing you to fail. So the vibe of frustration will show up, and you'll be like this when you walk in the door, or you'll get like that when you're in a conversation. So keep reminding yourself, an objection is an opportunity. An objection is a challenge. An objection could be fun. So keep reminding yourself so that you be appreciative of that objection. Wow, I really appreciate that I have an objection here. It's giving me more information. Look at that wonderful reframe. If it weren't for objections, some people wouldn't have a job, especially development directors and those of you who are in fundraising. Objections really, you're faced with them every day. So welcome them. And remember that not every donor clearly sees why they should donate to your cause. And that's why they need you to help convince them. And they reveal interest, as I've said before. So it's really anything they say or do that presents an obstacle to your successful completion of the ask of the sale. Remember, they usually contain both logic and emotion. So while you can answer some of those objections with the logic of pulling out the charts and showing them the percentages and all that, you also have to remember that very often there's an emotional component to it. How are they feeling? What did what you said evoke in them? So the very first step is to calm that emotion by proving you're open to hearing what they have to say and acknowledging your respect for their opinion, for they're entitled to it. Wayne Dyer, prolific author, speaker, used to quote, I think he was a physicist by the name of Max Planck. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I like to quote Wayne because he's the one who said it all the time. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So as you listen today, keep this in mind, because we're here to help you change the way you look at things so that you will get different and more successful outcomes. Years ago, I was a sales manager. I was actually a division head at a publishing firm up in New York for 12 years. I ran a sales team and a very successful one. There was a young man that wanted to come and work for me, and he really wanted to come and work for me badly. He would come and literally say, he worked in the research department. He would literally come and sit at my desk and ask me over and over again. I mean, he'd build rapport. He was good at that. But then he would say, can I come and work with you? And I'd say, I don't have an opening. Well, finally, after about a year, I figured, my God, this kid is persistent. Let's make sure he gets a job here. So I set it up to have him take the sales test and everything he had to do. And lo and behold, Lee came to work with me. So in the beginning, the thing that you give to the youngest salesperson is all of the leads no one else could convert. That big list of leads that nobody wants to go through. So of course, Lee comes and it's a rite of passage, and he's got to go through making those calls every day. And I'm starting to feel sorry for the guy. And I walk into his office one night, it's about 5:30, and he's still banging at it because we served the whole country. And he's still at it, and he's still at it. And I looked at him and I said, must be tough, huh? I know it's tough when you come into a sales department and you've got to go through these leads. And he goes, no, I'm having a great time. I looked at him and I said, really? He said, yeah, I don't think of it that way at all. So of course I asked the question, how do you think of it? He said, well, I think of it this way. What you gave me is a big plot of land. And what I'm doing is I'm turning over the soil every day, and I'm picking up the rocks, and I'm taking the rocks out so I have a nice fertile piece of land to work with. And I got rid of 35 rocks today. Well, I burst out laughing and have never forgotten the story, because he taught me one of the most positive reframes I have ever heard in my life. So try that kind of reframing. And know that before you go to the ask, you have to have done all the stuff ahead of time, your homework. So have you qualified the prospect? Are they like-minded and like-hearted? This program that you're seeing today, assumes that you're dealing with a qualified prospective donor, that this isn't your first rodeo, this is not your first time out to go and talk to this donor. So we're assuming certain things so that you'll get value out of today. Now, objections come all over from all kinds of people, places, ideas. Objections come in all forms. I don't have enough money. I have to put it off until next year. I don't think we have a match. There's all kinds of objections that you can make. And they all fall into these common areas of concerns. Are you doing important work? Are you well managed? Will my gift make a difference? And will the experience be satisfying for me? So I want you to think about that for a second. The last time you got an objection, no matter what it sounded like, think about what area it might fall into of these common areas of concerns. And I'm going to launch a very quick poll so you can let us know, because I'm so curious as to which I have a bias here, because I think I know which one is going to come out on top. So let's go ahead, and you're going to see this on your screen. What concerns do you hear about the most? Now, remember, they're not going to use these words all the time. They may use other words, but what concerns do you think are the ones that you hear most often? See the poll numbers coming in. We've got about 35% of you have already voted. Really interesting. So far, my bias is wrong. Let's give this. We're not up to 50%. So we're now getting some that say other. Didn't give us the option to have you write it in. So, and if they are other, you can always put them in the chat box, and they'll show up as a question. Okay. All right, we're about, I think we'll stop when we get to maybe 70%. Get most of you in here. Really interesting. Really interesting. I'm not giving away any secrets yet. Just watching it come in. Are you doing important work? Are you well managed? Will my gift make a difference? Will the experience be satisfying for me and other? Okay. You know what? We've had this poll up for over. Okay. One more person just popped in. Okay, we've had this going for over a minute. So, and I've got so much content to deliver that let me end the polling and let me give you the results. 8% of you said the concern is, are you doing important work? 8% said, are you well managed? 42%, which was the winner, is, will my gift make a difference? 33% said, will the experience be satisfying for me? And 8% said other. Really interesting. The one that I thought was going to get the most votes is, are you well managed? Because that's usually my objection. So thank you very much. So as you are thinking about this, the reason I put this up here for you is, as you are thinking about this, you make sure that in your presentation you are touching on each one of these points, and you have either in the back of your mind or in your briefcase a little bit more information that can answer all of these. Thank you to all of you who participated in this poll. Okay, this clicker, I'm telling you, this mouse today. Okay, there we go. So one of the things that you can do, and one of the things I recommend you do, is anticipate objections so that you can answer them before they ask, so that you can weave them. Now, you don't say with a bullhorn, this is usually an objection. You don't do that, but you weave the answer to the objection right into your presentation so they don't have to ask. Share information and experiences when you go back to the office with your team. Brainstorm this with your team. Figure out what, because your team is going to help you with this so that you can anticipate those objections and build the answers right in. It saves so much time. Another thing that you want to be calibrating all along the way is, do they feel good? Do they feel good about what you're presenting? Because they just want to be convinced that giving to your organization is the right thing to do. They want to feel good about being part of your cause. I know I want to feel good when I donate money, and I donate for very personal reasons. So making that match and understanding what's important to them is critical. Because that good relationship then, if you have the good match, and then you maintain the relationship, then you have donor retention, and that pays off for a lifetime. This Eric Fromm quote is one of my all-time favorites. It's about giving being the highest expression of potency. Because when I give, I experience my strength, I experience my wealth, I experience my power. I feel more potent, I feel more joy. I experience myself as overflowing. I experience myself as alive. So you are giving the donor the opportunity to have this wealth of experience. And when you frame what you do like that, it changes the nature of what you do. And when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So let's embrace those objections. We're going to have a little plan here. Hear the donor out. Confirm your understanding of the objection. Acknowledge their point of view. I'm going to go deeper into these. Select a specific technique. Answer the objection. And then attempt the ask if the timing feels right. So let's start with this one. Listening is wanting to hear. Listening is giving the gift of attention. I'm a salesperson myself, and I have to tell you that sometimes I fail on this because I'm so busy wanting to tell my story that I'm not listening to what the other person is trying to tell me. So I literally have to slow myself down and remind myself to listen. Listening is a way to acknowledge somebody and show interest. It often builds self-esteem, not only for you, but for them. It's a way of saying, you're important, you're valuable. I mean, how do you feel when you go out with a friend and they pick up their cell phone and start looking and put their head down and they start texting someone when they're talking to you? You don't feel very valuable, do you? But really listening, putting your attention on the person who's speaking makes them feel good, important, special, and valuable. It's a way to discover values, motives, and meaning. And when you discover their values, motives, and meaning, it helps you take that presentation to the very next step. Because remember, this doesn't happen overnight. This is not, you ring a doorbell, you go in, you get money, and you leave. This is a process. This is a building relationship process. We want to listen, again, actively and effectively, because it shows respect and empathy. It's a way to reduce stress and tension. And that open, non-judgmental, hear my words, open, non-judgmental listening allows the talker to vent and release. And when I say non-judgmental, I mean be non-judgmental in your attitude and in your body language. Because if you are listening to something thinking you're being non-judgmental, but your face is going, not working, because our body language speaks so loud. So listen actively. It builds teamwork, builds trust, and it gives you insight, not just information. We should be spending, hear this one, 50 to 70% of our time listening and not talking. So many of us are so wanting to talk about what we're selling. And we listen, unfortunately, only at about 25% efficiency, because people speak at 125 to 150 words a minute, but they can listen at 450 words a minute. So while someone else is speaking, what are you doing in the gap? What are you doing in the gap? Thinking about what you're going to do next, thinking about what you're going to reply, thinking about your next appointment, thinking about your grocery list. So start paying attention. It takes work to listen because of the gap. My favorite, I just love this. Remember, you don't talk donors into giving gifts. You listen them into giving gifts. This is something that really I've taken to heart. So when you get an objection, you first confirm and acknowledge. Some objections will be very light in the beginning, so you confirm them for understanding. You restate what you heard. You say things like, as I understand it, and then repeat back to them what they said to you so you make sure you have understood it correctly. There's a lot of misunderstandings out there. Explain it back to them in your words. Isolate their concerns. So you're only dealing with those individual concerns. Ask questions, and we're going to do a little bit more about that question asking later. But feel free to ask questions. That's the way to get the answers. The brain runs on questions, so knowing some really good questions really helps. And you know, when my career has been heavily in the retention and loyalty arena, retention, donor retention, client retention, member retention. And when I do get to speak to people who are facing the customer or the donor, one of the things I explain to them is you got to be really careful how you use your words. Because when you say to someone, I understand how you feel, something in them is likely to say, oh, no, you don't. You can't understand where I've come from. So instead of saying, I understand how you feel, this is my favorite phrase, I can understand how you might feel that way. And then go on from there. Because that shows a sense of empathy without assuming that you actually know what's going on in the mind of the donor. I can understand how you feel that way. And you may choose to answer the objection right then and there, or you may choose to move it along and keep going if you know that you're going to be answering that objection somewhere in your presentation. Because you never know when the objections are going to come. So have some fluidity here. And this is something that you also learn over time, to listen to your gut, to listen to what your intuition is saying. And I will tell you this, when you stay in the heart space, when you continually remember to take that breath, go to that area around your heart, the more you do that, the more intuitive you become. Now, this is science. This is work that comes out of the Institute for Heart Math in California, who I study with. This is science. When you do this on a regular basis to get yourself into that beautiful sine wave of appreciation, by thinking of something you appreciate, you become more intuitive. So you'll be able to read the signs so much easier. So if you've answered the objection sufficiently, as best you can, you certainly can attempt to close or ask, if you're far along in the process, to really understand what people are looking for. Now, if it's not successful, continue on. So after answering a major objection, now you do want to ask for the gift again. Don't let it discourage you. Just say to yourself, well, maybe the time wasn't right. And then, of course, the worst that can happen is that they'll say no. But keep going with the presentation as best you can. Maybe you were just a little premature, and again, that timing comes with experience. So today we're going to give you 6 tools to negotiate objections. One's called Feel, Felt, Found. The next one is a counterbalancing technique. Then asking questions, displaying empathy, and denying objections. And you want to be a little careful there. You got to be careful. Got to be careful that your ego doesn't get involved, so that you don't put up that kind of a front where, no, that's not true. You want to handle, again, fluidity, the law of requisite variety. The more fluid you can be, the more flexible that you can be, the more you can navigate the dance of relationship. And use curiosity. Most people don't know this, but curiosity is a positive emotion. So the more you learn, I mean real curiosity. Real curiosity. So like you had when you were a kid, like how you were when you were 7. When you use that, it helps your body create all of the good chemicals that you create the positive emotion. So here's feel, felt, found. And this is a time-honored way of doing it. So answer the objection by referring to a third party and use that experience as your proof. And then provide some new facts which allow the prospects to value your proposition. So you might say something like, I can understand how you feel. Before Mrs. Ruiz gave her support, she felt the same way. But after she discovered that over 90% of her funds were going directly to the children, then she found that she wanted to be part of our cause and gave us her wholehearted support. See what happened there? More importantly, did you feel what happened there? Because you're connecting on an emotional level when you do this. Feel, felt, and found. Click, click, click. The next one's called counterbalance or compensation. Excuse me 1 second. Let's get a little tea here. Thing about presenting like this, where people aren't talking back to me, is that I forget to breathe. I lose my wind. Sometimes I lose my voice. Counterbalancing or compensating. Admit the objection is valid when it is. Sometimes it is. And then describe some counterbalancing benefit. So here's what you're trying to do, right? Because value is always relative. So relate statistical evidence or a testimonial. So you might say, you're right, we do have a small staff, when someone objects to the size of your staff. Remarkably, that has worked to our advantage though. Since we're experts at recruiting willing volunteers, their energy is contagious. That keeps our costs really low and keeps more of your money going directly to the cause. That's done beautifully. Can you see what happened there? Counterbalancing or compensating for what would appear to be a weakness. So what you're doing is you're reframing it, which is the same way that you're thinking about your whole job and your whole, when you go out to fundraise and get the ask, you're reframing it. So you're helping them reframe it. And you know why questions can help turn up broad generalized objections so that the specific ones can be addressed. So you might say, I'm sorry to hear that. May I ask why so I can better understand your feelings on this subject? As opposed to just saying, why is that? See the difference? Or again, feel the difference, hear the difference. May I ask why so that I can better understand your feelings? No one's going to say no to that. So this is really a helpful method for separating excuses from objections. So you can say, what is it specifically that you don't like about our position? Now you're getting down to the heart of the matter. Now, when the prospect has the wrong information, you may need to deny the objection. If their resistance isn't valid because they've got completely had the wrong information, you will need to refute it by providing accurate information. That's part of your job. So you want to be firm but sincere and not at all defensive. So the not at all defensive part comes in when you breathe and remind yourself that you're a professional. Very often, again, years of training in customer service departments and lots of people that face the customers, the members, the guests, the donors. Very often what happens is when someone says something negative about your cause, you get defensive and you want to defend it. And they can feel that immediately. So something has to take place between the stimulus of their objection and the response that you're going to give them. You don't want to give them a reaction, you want to give them a response, and there's a difference. So this is something you want to practice, this idea, excuse me, this idea of not being defensive, important to learn. So you might say something like, I'm sorry, I don't fully understand what you're saying. If I gave you that impression, I certainly do apologize. I must have stated my position poorly. Please let me correct that for you. So that's one way to deny the objection. This is another one of my faves. This one's called the Boomerang Method. I'm watching my time over here because I have a feeling that there's going to be questions. So if you see me glancing down, it's because my clock is not staying on without me pushing the button. This one is called a Boomerang Method. So this is a fun one. You initially agree with the concern, but then make a statement that turns it into a selling point. So you're converting the objection into a reason for them to give. And this works well when your prospect doesn't have complete information. So here's the response. There's no question that our charity is new to women's rights. That's why we're so eager to build awareness for the cause and need your help. In fact, our new status is what most of our donors love about us. We have a fresh, eager team that is so fired up that we've already doubled the number of donations we hope to get this year, or the number of people that we hope to help this year. In fact, our numbers have grown 45% over last year so far. Now that is boomeranging it. You're taking the concern, you're turning it into something positive. Again, it's a reframe. You're reframing it and sending it back to them. Now they've got more excitement about it. And then there's curiosity. And we are in a relationship-driven approach to professional fundraising. So curiosity is natural. So prospects may be, and I would say probably always, going to be mentally comparing other things in their brain. They're comparing, everybody's only got a certain amount of money they're going to spend. So they're comparing one cause to another. They're comparing like causes. They're comparing causes that are different. They're checking in with themselves to find out how they feel about that. So you want to demonstrate a genuine curiosity. You've been asking questions all along, so this is going to feel natural. So if someone says, I don't think your cause fits into my philanthropic goals this year, you might ask the question, would you be willing to share why you feel that way? So that gentle sense of curiosity coming from the heart really allows for that exploration. And it gives your donor the opportunity to open up and tell their story. That's more information for you. So use the curiosity method all along wherever you can. Go in with curiosity. And then, of course, after you've answered one of those objections, well, after you've done a good job, then attempt your ask. Attempt your ask. Attempting the ask sounds differently. Would you be willing to contribute? Can I count on your support? There's so many ways to do it. Here's a way I heard of that was quite fun that somebody did. Well, look at it this way. You could change one life or a whole classroom. That's the difference between a $500 gift and a $20,000 gift. Just imagine each child and their families and the huge impact that you will have on their lives forever. Multiply that 20 times and now we're changing the world. Can I count on your donation? Boy, you see the emotional impact of that? Can we count on your donation? And of course, if there's an objection, if they say no, you go back into the cycle. You go back into the cycle. But I trust that at this point, after taking all 4 of our webinars, that you're well prepared in all of the approaches. So this will only be 10% of the job. Now, I'm gonna say this now because it's really important to us. At the end of the webinar, and it's not over yet, at the end of the webinar, there's gonna be a feedback form that pops up the moment I click the end meeting button. Promise me you'll stay with us so that you can take that feedback, because your feedback is so important to us. And it just may determine whether or not we can do another series like this for you. So after the questions, after Lori's said goodbye and closed everything, hang on for that extra minute till I get remember my button pusher thing here isn't working real well. So hang on for that extra moment until I can get the close meeting button, and then boom, you're gonna get your feedback form. Promise? Good. So ask me questions. Diana has been sifting through them. So Diana, you want to jump in here with me?
Sure. Thank you so much, Joanna. That was wonderful. And just a reminder, everybody, that survey link will also go out to you in an email, as well as a link to be able to watch this webinar well beyond today. We're going to have it recorded and loaded to YouTube in many different ways. So we make sure to give that link to you so you can share it with colleagues, with friends. If you want to rewatch it yourselves, it will be available, as well as that link to the survey. So let's get started with some questions. We have a few good ones. So let's just kick it right off, and it's not too late. If you have any questions or even your favorite ways to make the ask, please do submit them now. We'd love to be able to take them in these last few minutes. So let's get started. So Joanna, we had a few questions actually sort of related to the interactions that you have with your client or donor. So how many interactions do you feel like you need with a donor or a client before you actually go in to make that ask? Is there sort of a magic number having to do with that interaction?
Oh my goodness, magic. Don't you wish there was? There's no magic number. There's no magic number. If you know that person really, really, really well, and there's someone that you've already known for a long time, and you're going in and you already know about what they believe in and things like that, you may be able to make the ask like that. In most cases, however, it's about building relationship. So how long does it take to build relationship? There's a cup of coffee, there's going to their office, there's a couple of emails that are going back and forth, there's a phone call or two, there might be a greeting card or I send postcards all the time. I still send postcards, got great little postcards. There's all these steps in building a relationship. There is no magic number. There is no magic number. It could be as many as 5 or 6 times before you are able to get that person to look at you. And I'm going to tell you this from my own experience, because I sell all the time. Sometimes you don't make the sale, or you don't get a yes, I should say. You make the yes. You don't get a yes immediately. And sometimes you may need to back off for a short period of time and then reconnect, because everybody's got a ton of stuff going on in their lives now. So it may not be that they don't want to give to your cause. It may be they have 20 other things on their plate. So I would say, when it comes to looking at this, be open-minded. Don't look for a number. Look for a feeling. Look for a way of knowing that when you're feeling close to, when you're feeling comfortable, when you can feel that they're feeling comfortable, then you've built a relationship, and then you have the right to go for the ask. So I am so sorry. Let's say 1 to 10, somewhere in there.
And I love that flexibility, because it is a relationship. It's a back and forth interaction. You're allowing for it. You're allowing for a flexibility to interact however you need to be able to get that close. So our next question actually is a really good continuation of this one, actually. And that is sort of related to, when you go back in, let's say you got that no, you got that objection, and you're going back in to revisit, is there a specific way to do it? Is it just a matter of picking up where you left off with that relationship, or is it something more cautious?
Well, I would rather see you keep it optimistic than cautious. Because remember, when we have that feeling of caution, we are in the state of danger. So I would say go for thoroughness. I would say when you go back in the second time, go back in with optimism, but make sure that you've done your homework to make sure that you've answered everything that they've objected to. Maybe it's your management, maybe it's that you haven't adequately. Our poll showed that it's got to do with what they're going to feel. Will they feel like will their contribution make a difference? So I would say, rather than cautiousness, go back in with specificity, and be able to, take good notes while you're there, so you know what the objections are, and then come back in and say, I've got additional information I'd like to share with you. Do you see the difference with the cautious? You know, cautious is like, oh, you know, maybe this will work, maybe this won't. Go in with the feeling of confidence that you've taken a deeper dive into understanding what matters to them, and then you're giving it to them in perhaps a different point of view, because we all take in information differently. So maybe they didn't hear it, maybe they didn't see it, maybe they didn't feel it, and maybe you want to use a different way of approaching them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. Thank you. Just another quick reminder, guys, we do have a few more minutes. So if you have more questions, please do submit them. But we have one more that I think is, again, sort of a continuation of this, because when we're going back in after an objection, I think there's a lot of fear. And I know you mentioned earlier, we had some people confirm, you mentioned earlier that it's important that you understand and you isolate the concern and sort of restate it in a way. So when you go back in for that, you know, second time, third time, whatever it might be, is it important to restate then, or are you moving forward? Are you moving forward with optimism, sort of avoiding that there was an objection?
I would say it depends on how big the, number one, make sure you're able to answer the objection. And I'd say I would make a case for going in there with optimism, because between the time they gave you the objection and now, they may have forgotten all about the objection. So be ready to answer it on the spot. Have if you want to use a technique, have it planned out ahead of time, but go right back in there with optimism and say something like, let's revisit this. Rather than saying, well, let me answer your objection. Don't bring up the word objection. Let's revisit how your contribution is going to be used for this cause. That's the way I would handle it.
I love that. Yeah, and it sounds like from our poll, that's the most important, making sure that they know that their money is being well used. So I love that response. Thank you so much, Joanna. We don't have any more questions for today, but if anything does come up, you're always welcome to reach out to us. Again, make sure you watch the recording again, share it with your colleagues and friends, and a reminder about that survey. I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Well, I would love to see, Lori, do you have any questions, or do you have any additions to how you make the ask, or how you've seen people make the ask? I love the story you told at the beginning. So before I put your slide back up and turn it over to you, let's see if you have a question or a comment about objections.
I think you covered this beautifully. I know that I'll be going, it's something I think you always have to go back through. So I'll be going back through and looking at our recordings and looking at the materials again. And it's a good, you know, as you're preparing for some of these meetings, I'll be looking at these again. And I would suggest that everyone else use these tools. Refreshers are great.
That's a great idea. So I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody and tell them they can get on to returnonhappiness.com. We've got free newsletter. My free newsletter is there. Got a bunch of websites, got a book out. And I'm just going to turn it back over to you, Lori, then, so that you can wrap up our 4-part series. I want to take a moment to say thank you to you, to your donor, to NLI for all the help. This has been a gorgeous experience for me. I have loved doing this. And I learned a lot in doing it as well, because it made me have to go back and refresh some of the tools that I need to use in day-to-day living. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this.
Great. And thank you all for joining us today. And thank you, Joanna. We hope that you found all of this information helpful. And again, please look for the survey coming your way next. And do share ideas for topics you would like to hear in future, later webinars. Again, and we will also send out a survey post after this to all of our participants in all of our series. Your feedback is critical for us as we look at what more we can do and how we can help the community of for-profits and not-for-profits advancing in leadership. You can find this series on our TCI YouTube page. And if you'd like to rewatch a segment or share it, and we encourage you to share these series. Again, on behalf of TCI South Florida, have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful weekend.
And happy Mother's Day.
Oh, yes, and happy Mother's
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Bye.